Well, there's the next restoration project, the 1971 Honda SL125. Some of this video might be a little bit of a repeat of one I did a year or so ago when I talked about this bike as being my next restoration, so forgive me if it's a little bit redundant. This bike I bought a number of years ago now, probably at least 5 I would guess, at Mid-Ohio. That's a large vintage motorcycle show. It's a track, and they have a very large swap meet. And I've been looking for a 125 Honda, an SL 125 Honda, for quite a long time. And coincidentally, an acquaintance of mine, I wouldn't necessarily call him a friend, I know him, I crossed paths with him a number of times over the years. Lives about 50 miles from me, north of me. Has a little booth there at Mid-Ohio in the swap meet, and he had this bike. So this bike literally came from 50 miles away from me via Mid-Ohio in the middle of the state of Ohio. And I was chatting with a guy, and showed up at his booth, and I knew him, his name's Dave, and I was looking at some of his stuff, and his living is vintage motorcycles and parts, and I saw this bike sitting kind of off to the side, and I asked him about it, and long story short is I bought it. I think I paid $100 for it, if I recall. I'm not sure anymore. I get my bikes mixed up. Anyway, they're relatively rare in my area. The SL100s are very common. Those you find all over the place, but the 125s, for whatever reason, probably because of price at the time when they were bought new, I'm guessing, aren't near as common. And this was originally that emerald candy green color. As you can see, it's obviously clearly faded now, but it was the right color, even though that would not affect what I would do. I'd paint it green anyway. It's relatively intact. The body side covers are missing right here on each side. Those are kind of a triangular shaped cover. You can get those repopped. You can get very good quality repopped ones, actually, in plastic rather than fiberglass if you want to pay for it. The engine is stuck. It's locked tight. I have no idea what's wrong with the engine. That'll be one of the first things I'll get into. I do have a carburetor for it, though you can buy reproduction or repop carbs from China. I do have an original key-in I bought somewhere along the way for it. The taillight obviously has been wiped out, and in terms of the meters, the speedometer is okay, reasonably speaking, but the tachometer has been damaged severely, so I'll have to look into that. Body work isn't bad. I think there's a little damage to the front fender. That is metal. Both the front and rear fenders are metal. I think the fuel tank is reasonably intact. I don't think there's any serious damage to that, though I haven't frankly looked it over closely. There is a dent in the muffler right here, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that right now. It's got knobby tires on it. This bike was not originally delivered with knobbies. Of course, that's one of the first things everybody did, is rip the lights off and put knobbies on it and use it off-road. Those will go, of course, and I'll try to find period correct tires for it. It's a 21-inch on the front, 275 by 21 on the front, and I think it had a 325 by 18 on the rear originally. Less chrome than the Yamaha YL1 had on it. The Yamaha YL1 had a lot of chrome. The part of the fork tubes right here, covers, there's actually a cover that goes over those upper part of the stanchions of the fork tubes. The headlight ears are chrome. I have those. Those actually came with a bike and were in a box, and I have those in the shop. Of course, the taillight assembly mount is chrome. A little heat shield on the muffler. The rims, of course. Handlebars. That's about it for chrome. I believe this bike will be a little easier to restore from a parts availability perspective than the Yamaha YL1, only because there was more of these kind of Hondas around. This model shared a lot of parts with the SL100, and there's a lot of them out there. I don't know if they're going to be any cheaper than the YL1 parts, but I think they're going to be more available, at least in North America, and I'd have to go to Asia to find them. So I do think it will have more parts available for it. And being less chrome, it'll be a little more less expensive from that perspective. Probably will do the paint myself eventually when I get to it. That'll be quite a ways down the road, of course. First thing we'll do is I will pull this in the shop. I will document it thoroughly with photos before I do anything. It might take me the better part of a day to document everything as it sits right now and start creating my historical record of where I started with it and how it goes together. And then I'll gradually start taking it apart. There's the opposite side of the bike, the left side of the bike. I do have the cap for the fuel tank. I think that's in the box of parts. Got the ignition keys hanging right there on the handlebar. Chain's missing, not a surprise. But it's about the same condition as obviously the other side. The controls right here are not original to this bike. Those are aftermarket. You can see the black here and here. Those are the mounts for the clutch and brake levers, of course. But the controls themselves are original. I misspoke myself. Those are original, but the perches or the mounts for the clutch and brake lever are not. One of the things I'm going to be careful on when I start taking this apart and I get it stripped is check the frame to see if it was bent or is bent. I suspect this bike was thrashed pretty hard, probably by a teenager, and it's not uncommon to find bent frames in something like this. Skid plate, by the way, is missing. I'm pretty sure it did have a skid plate at one time. So I'll check it over, make sure there's no cracks or bends in the frame, because that'd be a serious thing that I would have to address first before I continue on with the restoration. And you can also see right here that the spark advance unit is missing in the top end of the engine. I've worked on quite a few Honda singles in my life. This is the first SL125 I've worked on. I've worked on other 125s, but not this particular model. I think I worked on a CB. I know I did a CL one time. I didn't own them. I worked on them for other people. I've done 175s, I've done 90s, 65s, the SL70, a little different style motor I restored for my own project a number of years ago. There's some videos on that, I think. So I'm quite familiar with these Honda motors. Let's move it inside. Pulled the SL125 up onto the stand, and I thought I'd share this with you. I pulled the oil drain plug on the bottom of the engine. I checked the dipstick and it didn't register any oil, so I pulled the plug to see if there was in fact anything in there, and the good news is there was a little bit of oil in there. Not much, but a little. And the bad news is the fact that there was so little oil. Here's all the extra components that I have for the SL125s. Most of these were provided to me when I bought the bike. The guy had this stuff in a box, the owner I bought it from, with a couple of exceptions. One is the headlight shell right here. I bought that, in fact I think I bought that at Mid-Ohio. So the headlight shell and the gasket kit, not sure how I ended up with two of them, but I've got two engine gasket sets that I bought. The rest of these parts came with the bike. Over here is a carburetor that I rebuilt. Actually, that was part of a video series I did a few months back now. So that's actually done. That carburetor did not come with the bike. Actually, I made a mistake. I said the rest of these bikes came from the owner I bought it from. The carburetor I got on eBay. I believe all the rest of these parts did come with the bike when I bought it. Someone has attempted to get inside of this engine before. I could tell by looking at it, and in fact over here we have the advance mechanism. Right there, spark advance, and that looks suspiciously like the upper cam chain gear that drives the cam in the top of the head. So I'm pretty sure that all came from the engine. We have some exhaust parts here, part of the stator assembly here. I think this wire, that's not broken, I think that's for the neutral switch. Not sure what this goes to anymore. This has a label on it that says taillight harness, and that actually is my writing, so I don't remember buying that. I might have figured that out somehow or other. Engine brackets, it looks like there's two sets of these. These are engine mounts that attach the engine to the frame in the front. I'm not sure why I've got two sets of them, but I do. Fuel tank cap, got a little dent in it right there. It's unfortunate because otherwise that could be easily re-chromed. Drive sprocket cover, left drive sprocket cover, and then the fuel petcock, which is pretty rough shape. Most of this is salvageable. Headlight ears, those have to get re-chromed. Pretty much all of this is salvageable. Require a little work. I'll have to do some testing on the stator. Not sure why that was pulled off. Now, there is the engine cover on the bike, so I don't know if this is a spare, or this is actually one off the bike, because I haven't gotten into there yet. But anyway, these are the parts that, or most of the parts that I got with the bike, minus a few exceptions. Well, we got the bike inside on the stand, and we'll be proceeding with documenting and breaking it down here next. But before I end this video, what I'd like to talk about is my approach going forward on the Honda SL125. I'm going to do it a little bit different in terms of the video work going forward versus how I did it on the Yamaha YL1. The Yamaha, even though I really never intended to start this way, I ended up really doing a how-to series on restoration, particularly on the reassembly side of things. I didn't do a lot of video work on the breakdown of the bike. But that was very laborious. A lot of work goes into creating videos, by the way. If you've never done it, those of you that are creators know what I'm talking about. But a lot of effort and a lot of time goes into it. And what I think I've concluded is there's really two types of viewers of at least my YouTube videos. I can't speak to everyone's, but the first group is really those that are seeking entertainment. And those are the folks that simply are cruising YouTube. They're looking for topics that interest them. They probably join some channels that have content that appeals to them. And they're not necessarily looking for a lot of detail. They're not looking for necessarily a how-to. And they'll typically cruise through. They'll watch a video, a couple of minutes maybe, and if it doesn't appeal to them too much because of too much detail, they'll quite often just bail out and move on to the next video. Those are really the entertainment viewers. The second major group, I believe, are those that are looking for a solution to a specific problem. So they have something they're working on, they have a problem, they can't get a sprocket off, or whatever the case may be, and they'll jump on YouTube, and they're often in a hurry, or they want a solution. And what they really want when they find a video that speaks to their problem, they want the creator to kind of get to it. They want, show me how to solve my problem. I don't want to hear a lot of verbiage. I don't want to hear a lot of conversation. Show me how to get the sprocket off. They want to get in, get out, and go on back to their project. I'm pretty confident those are the two major groups, at least that participate on my channel. And then those in between are really, which is a much, much smaller group, I believe, those that are interested in the detail of like the restoration series I did on the Yamaha YL1. The challenge is that viewership of that third group, those that are interested in a restoration, are quite small, a handful of people, relatively speaking. And to be frank with you, I believe it's not a good use of my time just to invest in staging, setting up, creating the video, methodically, providing all the detailed explanation, and then of course editing, posting, getting it out there for people to see. And it's a lot of work to have just a handful of people show interest in that video. And frankly, I see that the videos, my videos that get the most viewers are kind of the one-offs, things that I necessarily wouldn't think are of interest to people, but I posted it anyway. And lo and behold, a lot of people watch it. So for this project, I'm not going to do a how-to series, but what I will do rather is, as I'm working through the project and I encounter situations or I'm working on something in particular that might be of interest to folks, I will create a video for it. But I'm not going to do a complete step-by-step like I did with my last series on the Yamaha YL1. I'm probably going to spend some time on the engine, because the engine on this bike is, I think, in pretty rough shape. It's completely locked up. Transmission won't shift. The clutch doesn't seem to work. You can't kick it over. There's something pretty seriously wrong inside, and somebody has attempted to get in there before and probably gave up. So I might do a little bit detail around the engine itself and what I discover. But, and we'll see as we go forward how this plays out. But I did want my viewers to know that my approach is going to be a little different on the SL125 than I did on the YL1. That also means there might not be quite as many videos going forward as what I did in the last year or year and a half, but that's just kind of the way it goes. Any issues, questions, thoughts, please drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.